Hi, this is Bruce Lindsay working with Elizabeth Gallo on our project to document the stories of veterans. Today we are with World War II veteran Richard Brumbach. Richard served in the United States Navy during World War II, serving in the East Coast and in San Diego.
My name is Richard Brumbach. I was U.S. Navy Reserve 1943, September the 13th, 1943. I went to Sampson, New York, had my naval training base. From there, they sent me to Bainbridge, Maryland, to electrical school. That was General Electric School. After that, of 13 weeks, we went to Jacksonville, Florida Naval Air Base, where I took aviation electrician work to be done. From Jacksonville, Florida, we went to Norfolk, Virginia, where I was in what they call an ABATU, which means Aviation Base Training Unit. So we were getting ready for working on aircraft. From there, from Norfolk, we went to St. Louis Naval Air Station that time, which was Scott Airfield, and is the present airport I didn't go to San Diego yet. I'm sorry. I'll back up here. I went to St. Louis. St. Louis Scott Airfield is now the air station in St. Louis. From St. Louis, we joined an Acorn. Acorn was composed of Marines, Seabees, and regular Navy people. Air Force, all Air Force. And their job was to go into the ports and set up airfields. So from there they sent me to Port Hueneme. Port Hueneme is the disembark point for people going overseas. Come home on leave, went back, then they sent me to Thermal, California. It's the same base that Patton trained his tank corps. And that we had some more training. From that, we went back to Port Hueneme, getting ready to go overseas, and they even took away my rifle and everything else and said, "We don't need you. We're going to break you up, and we're going to send 1/3 to San Francisco, 1/3 to Corpus Christi, Texas," and I ended up in San Diego, Naval Air Station, and what they call the wing shop. And in that position, we put rocket launchers on wings, so that the Corsairs and the F-6s and all the aircraft could shoot rockets. And then one day they brought in a Japanese Zero, which had all the electrical wiring broke out. So they wanted that to go on a war bond tour, and they wanted all the lights to work on it. So we ended up putting electricity back in that Zero, and it's at some museum today, and I don't know where it is. So I got discharged in 1946, 2 years, 8 months, and 16 days. And that's the story of my life.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that you were only 16 when the war broke out. Can you talk a little bit maybe about where you were, when you heard about Pearl Harbor, and then how long it took to get you?
Oh, we heard about Pearl Harbor. We were in one of the classes in school. I don't know what class I was in, but it was 11th grade, I'm sure, because I was only 15 in 10th grade, and I was one of those poor guys that never missed a day of school. So I was in school. I had to be there, no other place to go.
Do you remember what you thought about? Did you know what that meant?
I don't think we thought too much about it, except that we were in a war. It wasn't. In high school, the people that were 18, the young people that were in school with me that were 18, they were all, most of those were drafted. Some joined the service completely. So it was either or. Either you got drafted or you joined the service, and they had no problem with going to service. So
Were you, so you were not 18 yet when, was it after you turned 18? Did you get drafted immediately or
I was
soon after?
I got my orders to go to Allentown training, selective service place up there when I was 18. I had to be 18 before they would take me, and then they put you through health tests, and I hate to say it, but my heart was going a mile a minute, and they were ready to reject me, but I talked them into staying. So that was it.
So you were drafted and then got selected for the Navy?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was your family life growing up? You grew up in the Reading area, correct?
Yeah.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I had 5 brothers and sisters. I have a brother that's now 96, and he was in World War II. And he was in the Navy. He was in the Army Air Force. So it was the 2 of us that only had my brother, and I had 3 sisters. So they're all, one of them had a heart condition that we would take her to school in a wagon, pull her to school in a wagon because she couldn't walk that good. And she had what they call a leaking heart at that time. That's a blue baby. That's what she was. So we were all family oriented. We were living in Shillington. My father was a manager for a lumber company, and during the Depression he got laid off, and he became the supervisor of county institutions for Berks County. So he was in charge of all the county home and all that stuff. So we had a life that mother stayed home, and the rest of us got into trouble.
So after you got out, then you mentioned what you did for your career afterwards?
And when I got out of the service, I went to work for Bell Telephone. And I had 38 years with Bell Telephone before they split up. And I'm lucky because they're paying the bill right now.
Okay. The other thing that we talk about is a lot of the veterans we've interviewed have done service to their community after they got out. You spend 2-3 years in the service, and then you spent the rest of your life serving in some other capacity. Besides working, what are some of the organizations you've been in?
Well, I've been very active in the Boy Scouts as a leader, a wood badge leader, and a trainer. I was active in the Boy Scouts with the Order of the Arrow, very active. I joined the Masonic body. I became active in the Masons, very active. I had, I became a member of New Cumberland Legion, and I wasn't too active in the Legion, but the VFW I'm pretty active in right now. So we'll go from there and see what happens.
And how old are you now?
I am now 99. And you can all come to my 100th birthday party.
All right. When's that going to be?
Next year, next June. Ask Dale. You have to ask my son.
I'll keep in touch with you. So another thing that we find is that because of your age and experience and all the things you've been involved in, what would be some advice you'd like to give to the younger generation if they're watching this?
Study hard. Don't pass anything up. Read a lot. I missed reading, and that's not good. So learn in school. Study. Don't play hooky and don't want to go to work right away. If you can go to college, go. If you don't like college, you go to a technical school. But get some more knowledge. You can't live with what you know now.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Were you involved in a church or anything, or
In what?
a church? Did you belong to a church?
Yes, I was a church. I was a Sunday school superintendent. I was active. I was an elder in the church. I was pretty active in the United Church of Christ, and I try to get to church every Sunday. But that's another thing I think you ought to do. There's too many people not doing that. Get the church to know what's behind you. And that's a fact.
Yep, I totally agree, and I've heard that same thing from a lot of people your age who've said that same thing. The easier question would be, what have you not been involved in? Because you were involved in the church, the Scouts, the Masons, the VFW, the Legion. You were involved in all kinds of community organizations. So that's awesome. Is there any other stories about your service? Anything that happened that was interesting that you might want to record?
No, I think some of the most interesting stuff took place in San Diego when I worked in the wing shop that I worked in. I was rated in there on what I did. Mm-hmm. And I do have the book, and I have a book back there someplace where they marked me. So they did keep a record. It was almost like the Navy depot here, except they were working on aircraft out there. Here this is mostly offices that they do. Out there they really did the work. And the most interesting thing is we were right outside of Capistrano. We go up to in California. And that was interesting going through. And fog, man, you'd come back in fog from Los Angeles to go back to San Diego. You could hardly see. We had a fellow that lived in he lived in Los Angeles, and he was in our unit in the training base. So it was quite interesting. He had his own hot rod car, and he'd take us and charge us to go to Los Angeles on a weekend. So I spent a lot of time seeing Lawrence Welk. I saw him before he was on television.
Were there any of the service members that you either went in from your high school or that you served with that you kept in touch with afterwards?
Yes, I did keep in touch with one fellow that was with me. He was on he come off of an aircraft carrier, the USS Cowpens, which was a small aircraft carrier, and he ended up in the same unit as I did. And what was interesting, the ship came into the base in San Diego, and he wanted to show me where his war station was. And I wouldn't have wanted to sit where he was sitting no matter what. He was sitting in a little hole pumping gasoline if an aircraft had to land and get more fuel. And he was sitting in a little place there. One little hit and boom, off he goes. I seen one airplane crash. And that was outside of San Diego.
Yeah, you said you were in North Island.
North Island.
Yeah.
North Island, San Diego. North Island, thermal California was interesting too, because that's in the Mojave Desert. That's right on the edge of the Mojave Desert. And that's where they did a lot of training. So we were up there. And you'd be surprised at how many stations were Army, and then all of a sudden they were Navy. So, and like I said, toward the end of the war, we were all set to go overseas, and they decided they didn't need us to send over. So, and I'll say this: being in Port Hueneme or thermal California is where we ate 4 meals a day. We had breakfast, lunch, dinner, and at 10 o'clock we had another meal. So and the food was fabulous because it was cooked by Seabees. We had the Seabees do the cooking, and it was interesting. Well, I will say this. My favorite aircraft was the Corsair. I loved that airplane. That one there, you couldn't see it. To land on a carrier, they had a mirror, like a glass window at the foot, at your feet, to land on the aircraft, because you sat below the wing, and you couldn't see up over the top. And starting aircraft, that was interesting. They had different ways to start. You could either crank start the thing, you could put a shotgun shell in it, and I think by the end of the war they had automatic start, but I can't recall that. I only remember starting a plane with a shotgun shell. They stick it in the bottom, and they boom, and it would turn the prop. Or they could pull the prop around. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
I just happened to think of another story.
Okay.
When I was in Norfolk, you see, on aircraft there is a voltage controller on aircraft, and you never know where they're going to be. And this happened to be in the cowling behind the motor. In other words, behind the propeller. And there was one, they had one with like fingers on it to control the voltage. Because they were no aircraft was, I think most of the aircraft was 24 volts or 12 or 24 volts, if my memory is correct. And they had this finger controller, and they didn't know if it was working. So I had this aircraft against the seawall. In other words, the ocean was behind me. And they had me get up on that cowling and hang on there, and I had to see if that controller was working. And they revved the engine up. If I'd have left go, I'd have been in the ocean. So that's a hell of a thing to do.
Yeah.
But that was it.
Yeah, that's why they have you do stuff like that when you're 18, right?
Yep. Oh, well, you were in North Island there?
I was in the Marine Corps Recruit Depot.
Yeah. Well, see, that there was a balloon hangar there, and we would go up the ladder, and there was a little walk that would go over to their tower. So we would go over the top there and had nothing, but we were fooling around and go over there and go up into that tower and play cards. Mm-hmm. So you had to be afraid of going across that catwalk because there was nothing there but holding on.
Those things are really, really huge.
Oh, that was, and I think it was 90 feet up there.
Yeah.
And if you go down, baby, you're gone.